afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Mary May.
So, last meeting, Group 6 discussed about the drama, the conversational genre. So now, let's continue to speech acts, turn taking that will be discussed by Shania, and politeness that will be discussed by Rita. So, speech act. When people say things, they don't just say things. They also perform acts by saying what they do. So, in the philosophy of language and linguistics, speech act is something expressed by an individual that not only presents information but performs an action as well. So, for example, the phrase, "I would like the kimchi." So, could you please pass it to me? So, it is considered a speech act as it expresses the speaker's desire to acquire the kimchi as well as presenting a request that someone pass the kimchi to them. So according to Kent Batch, almost any speech act is really the performance of several acts at once, distinguished by different aspects of speaker's intention. There is act of saying something, what does in saying it, such as requesting or promising, and how one is trying to affect one's audience. For example, I assure you that I will deliver the project ahead of schedule. So, by uttering these words in an appropriate context, I perform the act of promising. And if I don't subsequently do what I promised, I will have some explaining to do. So, also writing things also constitutes action. If I write 60% at the bottom of one of my students' essays, I have performed the action of grading the essay and have to a small extent determined the eventual degree which that student will award it. So these linguistic acts are action just as much cooking the dinner or kicking the cat. So what is more, by observing the speech act which different people perform, we can infer things about them and their relation with others. So what works for the real world also works in the fictional world of the play. So by observing patterns of speech acts used, we can begin to understand the characters on stage and how they relate to one another. So a clear example can be found is the William Shakespeare King Lear. So, si Dax o si Jerry. Si Lear, si Dax. Dili gamay na.
So, attend the lords of France and Burgundy, no sister.
I shall, my lord.
Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. Give me the map there. Know that we have divided in three our kingdom, and this our fast intent to shake off cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strengths, while we unburdened crawl towards them.
So thank you, Dax and Jerry. So, si King Lear here is the aging king of Britain and protagonist of the play. Si Gloucester is a nobleman loyal to King Lear whose rank earl is below that of duke. So this play is a tragic play which revolves around a king's life that undergoes a massive change due to his impulsive decision, who decides to divide his kingdom between his three daughters, si Cornelia, si Goneril, and si Regan before his retirement. So here, Lear's absolute power as king is reflected in the fact that he tells others what to do, and they do it immediately and unquestioningly. So for Lear, telling the Earl of Gloucester to go and meet the lords of France and Burgundy is a trifling example of his power. So however, by saying that he has divided up his kingdom, Lear actually creates the division publicly, a much more important matter. So the speech acts he uses and the speech act he uses are their intended effects all come to naught. So for the Elizabethans, all this presented a powerful conundrum. So if Lear is a king ordered by ordained by God, then he is a king. So happens, whatever happens, but if he is a king, he has the power to do anything he wants, including giving his kingdom away. So the play thus pulls apart two apparently intricably intertwined aspects of kingship. So Lear has no practical power once he has given his kingdom away. So yung gihatag ni Goneril and Regan. So, but ang isa niya nga anak na si Cordelia doesn't say anything as she cannot express her love sa iyang father ay sa King Lear. Kay murag ang gibasihan ni King Lear diri sa pag-divide sa kingdom is ipakita kung unsa nila kamahal ang ilang father. But na-shock pod ang si King Lear kay dili wala na kay istorya si Cordelia sa iyang father kung unsa niya kamahal. But despite of this is katong King of France marries Cordelia despite having no land. So speech acts, like other acts, change the world we inhabit. They have aspects on people and in turn make them do things. Like I can frighten others by threatening them with a knife. I can make them feel love by sending them flower or telling them how much I think of them. So I can get someone to open the door by standing next to it with arms full of groceries by saying, "Could you open the door, please?" Though we should note that, like Lear, when he tries to get Goneril and Regan to keep her promises, the effects intended by the speech acts may not necessarily be those achieved. So it is clear, though, that if we want to talk about this area with any clarity, we need some terms to distinguish the various aspects. These are the terms linguists usually use. The act performed by speaking, the speech act illocutionary force, intended effect as the consequence of performing a speech act, the intended perlocutionary force or effect, actual effect caused by the act, actual percussionary force or effect. So the intended perlocutionary force or effect, this effect is what a speaker intends an utterance to achieve in an addressee. For example, to inform the addressee, to get the addressee to do something, to get the addressee to have a particular expectation. So here in the King Lear example discussed, the intended perlocutionary effects of Lear's utterance at the very beginning of the play are almost always the same as the actual effects. So, but the end of the act 2, there is almost no match at all between its intended and actual perlocutionary effects. So in plays, speech acts, like other acts, usually only operate inside one of the levels of discourse. Para atong gi-describe ni Kyle last meeting, katong na addresser 1, message, o addressee 1. So if a character on stage says, "It's chilly in here," so we would be very surprised if one of the audience got up and shut the window. So you can sometimes get cross-discourse level interaction, though as the account of the example from the King of the Burning Pestle nga discussed ni Lourdes last time. Yes. So another is, the better known example would be the way that in Christmas pantomime, some characters get the audience to shout out and warn other characters of some impending disasters. Example is, say, Aladdin tell Aladdin that his weak uncle is coming. So here the speech act of telling the audience to shout out is performed at the character level, but the perlocutionary effect obtains at the audience level. Then when the audience shouts out to warn Aladdin, the speech act is performed at the audience level, and the intended perlocutionary effect is within the character level. So moreover, the actors can also make a play with the intended or actual distinction within the notion of perlocutionary effect. So the person playing Aladdin can, for example, pretend not to hear a warning shouted by the audience. But this sort of interaction across discourse levels is relatively rare, so speech act patterns usually tell us about the social relations among characters in the play in the fictional world. So how do we define or describe particular speech acts? For some speech acts, there appears at first sight to be quite a good fit between grammatical structure and elocutionary force. Indeed, the fit between these structures and the acts they realize is so good that teachers often use interrogative interchangeably with questions, imperative, command, and so on. So this is the grammatical structure, the interrogative structures, the speech act is the question. The example is he singing? The imperative structure, command, sing. And in the declarative structures, statements, he is singing. So, for example, is Jones can swim a land. So, out of context, most likely to be understood as a statement. But specifying the context carefully, I can make it into a command. Imagine that a class of school children are standing in their swimming costumes at one end of the swimming pools. And if the teacher says Jones can swim a length, in this context, the elocutionary force is more likely to be that of a command than anything else. And if Jones responds not by diving in and swimming, but by saying yes, that's right, sir, he is very likely to incur the teacher's displeasure. So these are not many different types of sentence structures, but there are very many different kinds of speech, like promising, threatening, pleading, stating, suggesting, challenging, and so on. So indeed, no one is completely sure how many there are. So this is why we cannot associate each speech act uniquely with a particular kind of grammatical structure. So now let's continue to the textual world we are about to step into. Consider the following beginning of the Harold Pinter, the trouble in the works. So, Phibbs and Sibyl. Okay, Sai is si Phibbs. And si Will is si Milona. Basta na. An office in a factory, Mr. Phibbs at the desk, a knock at the door, enter Mr. Wills.
Wills, good, come in. Sit down, will you?
Thanks, Mr. Phibbs.
You got my message?
I just got it.
Good. We'll now have a seat.
No, thanks. Not for me, Mr.
Well, now, Wills, I hear there's been a little trouble in the factory.
Okay, thank you, Sai and Milona. So from the very beginning of this sketch, we can infer that Phibbs is part of the management of the factory and that Wills is an employee. So we can also begin to sense that although he is apparently totally in control of the situation, things might not be quite as they seem. Situation which will have consequences later in the sketch. So we know from the stage directions that the context is in the factory. So this brings some background assumptions into play even before the characters start talking. So the fact that Phibbs is sitting at the desk clearly makes him part of the office staff at least, not a factory worker, and will lead us to suspect even on first reading that he is a manager of some kind. So when Mr. Phibbs' clear speech acts indications of master-servant relationship are Phibbs' commands, can I come, sit down. And the fact that Wills obeys them immediately, the message which Phibbs sent to Wills was clearly telling Wills to come and see him, a command which Will has obviously obeyed straight away. If it also explained that the form of Phibbs' second speech, you got my message, In the speech act terms, the sentence declarative structure in combination with a question mark makes it look like a hybrid between a statement and a question. Also, another indication of Phoebe's unsure attitude towards Will's occurs in his first speech. Sit down, will you? This is another hybrid speech act. The first part looks like a command, but the interrogative text and the edges the utterance towards being a more polite suggestion or request. So here is Phoebe says, have a cigar. Although this sentence is imperative in structure, it is an offer, not a command. So the question mark at the ends help us in this interpretation, as does the fact that Phoebe appears to want Wills to be something which he thinks of as being beneficial to Wills and having cause of himself. Also, this suggests that Phoebe is having some difficulty in embarking on the topic for which he has summoned Wills. So this interpretation is strengthened by Phoebe's repeated use of filler and the fact that when he finally mentioned the trouble of the factory, he placed down its importance by using the adjective little and grammatically embedding there's been a little trouble in the factory under I hear. So next is another is example 3 fifths, but not, surely not, my lovely parallel male stud couplings. Harold Petter trouble in the works. But Wills respond with an utterance which is cross between statement, abuse, and threat. Example 4, Wills, they hate the detest your lovely parallel male stud couplings. So the dramatic interest which Penter has set up then is in what the trouble is and how it affects the relationship between the two men. So it transpires the Phelps is the owner of the factory, and that the factory workers no longer want to make engineering products because they have taken a turn against them. So as the discussion unfolds, the power relation between the two men changes so that by the end of the sketch ends with Wills telling Phoebe that the workers want to make sweets instead. So our discussion of the Penter is track also reveals some other important things about speech acts and how they work. First of all, we can see that there is no straightforward one-to-one relationship between a sentence or clause and a speech act. A clause might contain more than one speech act or be the hybrid of 2 or 3 speech acts at the same time. So this kind of ambiguity is often extremely useful in social terms. An example would be the long speeches by Goneril and Durigan is the first scene of the King Lear, which both count overall and exert declaration of their love for their father. So speech acts are thus quite a flexible and powerful mechanism in helping us to interpret what we hear and read. And the next one is a comedic extract from the Faulty Towers. So I si Kaan, si Ate Jenny, Large Women, and si Basil, ay ka natulog. Sige, Kyle, Basil.
What is it?
Well, the point is, or can I put this way, fire.
What?
Fire.
Kasi musician.
Ay, sige, ikaw na.
Ikaw na, si Joyce. Ikaw, Joyce.
Where?
Fire. 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 Fire.
Thank you, Kyle and Jenny. So, in this comedic extract from the Faulty Towers, the humor revolves around the ambiguity and confusion caused by the word fire. So, Basil Faulty here is si John Cleese, one of the authors. So, initially, Basil struggles to articulate the seriousness of the situation, leading to a humorous delay in conveying the actual presence of the fire. This delay is caused by his attempt to be tactful of avoid causing panic. So the guest reaction, especially the large woman's repeated questioning what, and Basil stuttering fire. So highlights the confusion and panic that ensue when the word fire is mentioned ambiguously. So Basil escalating repetition of fire, 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 fire. So kano siya is murag comedy kun siya kay pag-ingon niya fire, pinabundak nga fire nga kusog nga fire, fire, fire. Then giadan po siya og comedy nga funny nga background. So his frantic repetition along with the guest reactions create a sense of absurdity and chaotic humor. So overall, the comedy in this extract is driven by the linguistic ambiguity, miscommunication, panic, and physical actions, all of which the hallmarks of the humor in Fawlty Towers. Next is the thing.
So good afternoon everyone. So let's proceed to turn taking and topic control. So let's focus on example number 2 wherein is the Trouble in the Works by Harold Pinter. So one thing that we can observe in this example as a consequence of the speech act, these speech acts are often connected together to form a conversational terms. Wherein, for example, we have here Mr. Figs asks Wills whether he got the message. Then he replies to Mr. Wills. Then another is Mr. Figs offer a cigar to Mr. Wills. Then si Mr. Wills he declines it. So this example is an example of conversational terms being chained together. So, being chained together as a consequence of their speech act values, or this example is a series of conversational terms where one term follows naturally from the prior one. So, when a single speaker performs a speech act, we can predict some level of certainty the occurrence of another speech act by another speaker. So with that, speech acts are often connected together into sequences of terms in conversation. So we have here patterns of linkage like these are patterns like linkage like these are part of the normal glue of conversation, wherein if mag-ask ka a question, of course we expect a question followed by an answer. Then an offer, followed by its acceptance or refusal, and an order, and by that order being carried out. So these are patterns of linkage that are part of the normal glue of conversation. However, these patterns are not limited sa pair nga utterances like duara ang take of turns. We also have the triple turns, wherein, for example, sa classroom, expectations of turn taking include triple of turns like question, response, evaluation, wherein kini nga type of pattern, for example, a teacher asks a question, then for the response the student respond, then for the evaluation the teacher will evaluate the student's response. So another example of a pattern of turn taking is a complaint followed by an apology, then a statement of forgiveness. Then we also have a more complex pattern, which is the question-answer pair embedded inside another pair to resolve ambiguity. So for example, aning a complex pattern, the question-answer pair is, for example, you ask me a question, but it's not clear what you're asking because it could have different meanings. So instead of guessing and give you an answer that might not be what you're looking for, I might ask you a question to clarify what you mean. So essentially, ang atong conversation would be if you asking the question, then I ask a question to since wala mo kasabot sa imong question, I ask a question to understand your question. So, then once makasabot na ko sa imong question, usa ko mo answer atong una nimong question. Usa ko mo answer sa imong question. So within atong a conversation, there's a smaller conversation where I ask for clarification before giving an answer. So the nested pattern of question-answer pair helps ensure inside another question-answer pair helps ensure that we are both on the same page. So turn-taking patterns and deviation from norms are meaningful in text. So for example, katong pupuan sa example number 2, trouble in the works. Phoebes is expected to use commands as the factory owner. So Phoebes, being the factory owner, might be expected to issue mga commands given his position of authority. So, however, dito sa example, si Phoebes, he uses polite speech acts such as katong ni-offer siya og cigar with wheels. So, it suggests that Phoebes might not adhere strictly to the typical boss-employee dynamic and could have a more considerate or less authoritarian approach. Likewise, Will's decline in the cigar indicates he might not automatically comply with his boss' wishes. So, Will's decision to decline the cigar despite of social norm of accepting offers from the superiors, it implies that Wills won't blindly comply with all of Phoebes' requests or directives during their conversation. So this refusal hints at Will's assertiveness or independence. So turn-taking involves more than just identifying speech acts used by individuals. So everyone seems to know when it's their turn to speak and when to let others talk. So when things get lively, people usually take turns without interrupting each other. So we have here, so look at the questions below and decide whether they apply as other things being equal to more powerful or less powerful interactants in conversation. I have indicated my intuitions with an X in the columns below. See if your intuitions about what is typical consignment. So we have here who has most turns. So the powerful speakers. Then who has the least, the powerless speakers. Then who has the longest turns, powerful. Who has the shortest, the powerless. Who initiates conversational exchanges, powerful. Who responds, the powerless. Who controls the conversational topic, powerful. Who follows the topic of others, powerless speakers. Who interrupts, the powerful. Who is interrupted, powerless. Who uses terms of address not marked, wala. Another. For respect, example, first name only, the powerful. Then who uses terms of address marked for respect. For example, title plus last name, powerless, and who allocates turns to others. So, patterns of turn-taking have clear general connections with conversational power. So, all other things being equal, powerful speakers tend to dominate in several ways. For example, kanisa, who has most turns. So, they often take the most turns, speaking more frequently than others or than the powerless speakers. So, also, pati mga powerful speakers, they have the longest turns, wherein their speaking turns are usually longer than katong sa powerless speaker. So, powerful speakers also, they initiate conversations, they control what topic are discussed and who gets to speak when. So, they also have the power to interrupt others, to assert their dominance or ensure their voice is heard. So, while powerful speakers may often dominate conversations, there are situations where these patterns can be disrupted. So, for instance, students can break out from class conversation regulations by breaking away from established norms, especially in informal settings where such behavior is encouraged. So this does not mean that all conversations follow the general patterns exactly. So the word concern, at least to some degree, again, students can break out from class conversation regulations, for example, and in some informal classes may well be encouraged to do so. Particular functional and contextual circumstances for conversations, often called activity types, also demand some variation from these general rules. So, different types of activities or contexts can influence how conversational power dynamics play out. So, for example, an interview activity. Here, the least powerful person, which is the interviewee, might be expected to have the longest speaking turn. So, this expectation stems from the purpose of the interview, which is to evaluate the candidate based on their responses. However, apart from this variation, the general rules of conversational power still apply. So, the interview typically retains control over the conversation, initiating topics, asking questions, and potentially interrupting or guiding the flow of the discussion. So we have here an example. Can you please go on with Ashaira, then Sanas, K. Rich.
My Lord, I have considered in my mind the late request that you did sound me in. Rich.
Well, let that rest. Dorset is fled to Richmond.
I hear the news, my Lord.
Stanley, he's your wife's son. Well, look into it.
My Lord, I claim the gift, my due by promise, for which your honor and your faith is pawned. Their dome of clear cord and the movables, which you have promised I shall possess.
Stanley, look to your wife, she can. Letters to Richmond, you shall answer it.
What says your highness to my just request?
I do remember me. Henry VI did prophesy that Richmond should be king, when Richmond was a little peevish boy. A king, perhaps.
My lord,
How chance the prophet could not at that time have told me, I being by, that I should kill him?
my lord, your promise for the earldom.
Richmond. When last I was at Exeter, the mayor in courtesy showed me the castle and called it Rougemont, at which name I started, because a bard of Ireland told me once I should not live long after I saw Richmond.
My lord,
Hi, what's o'clock?
I am thus bold to put your grace in mind of what you promised me.
Well, but what's o'clock?
Upon the stroke of light.
Well, let it strike.
Why let it strike?
Because that like a jack thou keeps the stroke betwixt thy begging and my meditation. I am not in my giving vein today.
May please you to resolve me in this suit.
Thou troublest me. I am not in the vein.
So in this example number 5, So, in terms of sa word count, the dominance of word count, despite an equal number of terms, Richard dominates the word count with 164 words compared to Buckingham's 107. So, indicating here that kaning nga conversation, si Richard has the control of the conversation. So, in terms of sa addressing terms, we have here Buckingham consistently uses status mark address terms. For example, kaning my lord and your highness. So, displaying difference to Richard's power. So, Richard's power. In contrast, Richard addresses Buckingham directly only once using the less formal thou. So, also in terms of sa interruption, Richard interrupts Buckingham 3 times, further asserting his dominance in the conversation. So, whereas si Richard here is the powerful speaker, while si Buckingham is the powerless speaker. In terms of persistence of request, si Buckingham persists in his request for his reward, emphasizing its importance to him. So despite his lower status, he initiates most exchanges and remains focused on his request. And also in terms of topic control, Richard deflects Buckingham's request by changing the topic or addressing others, then avoiding direct engagement with Buckingham's demands. Also, we have here indirect speech acts wherein Buck uses indirect speech acts such as stating that he has considered Richard's request, which indirectly conveys his expectation for Richard to fulfill his promise. Then, in terms of explicit request, we have here Buckingham's longest speech explicitly states his claim and grounds for it, expecting Richard to either agree or disagree. However, Richard evades a direct response and changes the topic. So, as the conversation progresses, Buckingham loses conversational power as Richard consistently avoids addressing his request directly, leaving Buckingham with no effective means to confront him. Another one example is for exercise 3. We have I have Myrna and Myrna o si Diana. Myrna first tapos Lady BC and Diana.
What's the matter?
Ay, sabi. Context. Lady Britomart, a woman of about 50, is writing at her writing desk in a rather grand room. Her son, Stephen, a young man, comes in.
What's the matter? Presenting Stephen.
Stephen walks submissively to the city and sits down. He takes up a liberal weekly called the Speaker.
Don't begin to read, Stephen. I shall require all your attention. It was only while I was waiting. Don't make excuses, Stephen. Now, I have not kept you waiting very long, I think. Not at all, Mother.
Bernard Shaw, Major Barbara. So in this example, so in terms of the initiation of conversation, the lady Rita Mart initiates the conversation by instructing Stephen not to begin reading and directs him to bring her to an ocean. So then in terms of length of turns, Lady B's turns tend to be longer and more assertive, focusing on directing Stephen's behavior and expressing her expectations. Then also sa control of topic, Lady B controls the topics of conversation, addressing and expressing her dissatisfaction with his behavior. So sa kanina example, si Lady B is the powerful speaker, while her son Stephen is the powerless speaker. So we also have here in terms of addressing Lady B uses authoritative language in terms of endearment, like atong my poor boy, to assert her maternal authority over Stephen. So in terms of persistence of request, Lady B persists in her demand for Stephen's attention and seriousness despite his attempts to make excuses or seek clarification. So Stephen here also acknowledges Lady B's authorities and attempts to comply with her demands even when expressing his confusion or discomfort. And lastly, shift in power dynamics, wherein Lady B attempts to shift the power dynamic by urging Stephen to take on more responsibility and assertiveness in their family affairs, implying that he should assume a more mature role. So the turn-taking patterns reveal a hierarchical relation between Lady B and Stephen. So with Lady B exerting control and authority over the conversation, and Stephen here is the nagsunod na siya sa demands of his mother although with some confusions and resistance. So overall, turn-taking refers to the orderly exchange of speaking turns between participants in conversation, and Napoy division din is a turn-taking wherein division from turn-taking norms can convey meaning and contribute to understanding power dynamics and social relations within the conversation. For example, katong sa example number 2, katong si Thebes and Wheels, wherein si Thebes is expected to be authoritative sa kang Wheels, which is his employee. So, mo siya example of deviation sa turn-taking. Then, we have topic control, wherein it involves the ability of participants to influence and direct the subject matter of conversation, wherein we have mentioned the powerful speaker and the powerless speaker. So, overall, understanding the turn-taking and topic control provides us an idea into how conversations unfold and how power is negotiated, and how social dynamics are manifested through language and interaction.
So Brown and Levinson in 1978-1987 suggest that politeness is a universal phenomenon affecting linguistic and other social behavior. So in examples, sa example ni Miss Palistes of Miss Mary May, the various forms of the vocatives which characters use to address one another have different effects in terms of politeness. So sa ilang examples kagani nga katong Wills versus Mr. Cleves in Trouble in the Works and Buckingham's repeated use of my lord when addressing to Richard III. So, di ba, ang katong sa example ni Shania kaganya is, sige balik-balik ang iyahang kuan sa my lord, pag yun yung my lord. So, when katong speaker ni, like, yang iingon of my lord, so, it is a sign of respect to the king. So, offering to perform an action beneficial to someone else. An example, thieves offering bills as Segor is polite to that person. And ignoring the needs and wishes of a person, when Richard III ignoring and deflecting Buckingham's just request for his reward is very impolite. So, they suggest that politeness is a universal phenomenon affecting linguistic and other social behavior. So, di ba, we want other people to be polite to us, and in return, we should be polite also to others. Because if we don't pay attention to the politeness needs of others, we are unlikely to be very efficient in getting things done. So imagine, for example, how difficult it would be to persuade your father to lend you some money while at the same time telling him he has not been a good father to you. So, Brown and Levinson's account of politeness is built around the concept of face. Your face is your public self-image and has two components, which are the positive face and the negative face. So, ato ko na ang public self-image. So, it has two components, the positive face and the negative face. So, positive face is our need for our actions and wants to be desirable to other people as well as ourselves. This is why being told well done or being clapped at the end of a performance is important for us, and it is also explains why the receiving of easy marks is such an emotional matter. A low mark does not just reduce your chances of doing well educationally, it also threatens your passive face because it counts as criticism on the part of someone in authority, criticism which will also damage your status among your peers. So, in positive face, kanang desirable, imong action is desirable sa lain, and sa imuha pong self is kuan, like, ma-appreciate pud nimo sa imong self nga kuan nga polite or respectful ka sa uban. Here in negative face is the wish that our actions should be unimpeded by others. This is why being asked, or even worse, told to do the washing up when you want to watch television is so annoying. So, negative face, dili siya, or it means impolite. Kanang like magreklamo ka nga, kuan ganun siguro man ko nga yan. So Brown and Levinson's terms many quite tribal acts are face-threatening to some degree. They use the term face-threatening acts or FTAs to refer to such activity. So if you want to be polite, then avoid or minimize the number and size of your FTAs as much as you can, given whatever needs to be done. And if you can't avoid an FTA, you try to mitigate the amount of threat by the way in which you say or do what to do. So, if you want to be polite, then you should sa imuhang positive mo nga face, di ba, kay natay two components, the positive face and the negative face. So, imuhang control nga, imuhang i-control imong self nga dili pud ma-apektaran ang imuhang positive face sa kanang when you want to be polite to others. soliciting someone to open the door to their room gently rather than abruptly. So, like, if mo visit ka sa kinsa no, like offices or unsa, so if mo abri ka sa iyong door, then you should open it gently rather than abruptly. Kay one would like ma-threaten po ang ilahang negative face kay kuan kanang like makuyawan sila or kanang mangisog na lang sila kay tungod sa imong pagkusog sa pag-open. So, and to ask rather than order someone to do the washing up. Asking gives your interlocutor the choice of saying no without social disruption, but ordering makes saying no much more difficult. So, ask rather than order to someone. Like, mas polite if mo, no, polite jud siya if mo ask ka, like, if it's okay or pwede ba, or like, pwede pa, alayon, ana dito. So, you should use the magic word, please, to ask anything or someone, rather than like, mag-order jud ka ba nga, dapat imuhan mo na imong ano. So, I know you are interested in that TV program, but can you do the washing up, please? So, in this line, this mitigates the FTA by taking account of the person's face once in the first clause, and by apparently asking a question by his or her ability to do the washing up in the second, and by using indirect speech act, and by adding the politeness marker, please. So, like, murag, kanang ni kuan siya nga, I know nga ganan ka sa TV program, but like politely, ngayon siya nga, he or she uses the word, the politeness marker, please, para like positive siya impact or polite siya. So, please read. Capulet is May Ann. Lady Cap is Ate Jenny, and si Juliet. Sige, go, si Kai. Sige, go.
How now, wife? Have you delivered to her our degree?
Ay, sir, but she will not. She gives you thanks. I would the fool were married to her grave.
Soft. Take me with you. Take me with you, wife. How is she not? Doth she not give us thanks? Is she not proud? Does she not count her blessed? And worthy as she is, that we have grown as so worthy a gentleman to be her.
Not proud you have, but thankful that you have. Proud can I never be of what I hate, but thankful even for hate that is meant love.
How? Chop logic. What is this? Proud, and I thank you. And I thank you. Not. And yet, not proud? Mistress minion, you thank me no thank you. Nor proud me no crowds, but fiddle your fine joints gains Thursday next, to go with Paris to St. Peter's Church. Or I will drag you on a hurdle either. Out, ye green sickness guardian, out with baggage, you tall face.
Yeah, so, but although politeness is our general social interest, impoliteness is around in dramatic text or any kinds of text. Kay impoliteness, diha ta maka-identify nga naay social conflict through impoliteness. Kay makita man nimo nga naa sila issue between characters. So, there is social conflict if there is politeness. So, in this passage, when Capulet first talks to his decree to Juliet to marry Paris in a few days' time, he can speak in such a bold way because he thinks that Juliet wants to marry Paris. After all, she has earlier said that she would be very happy with the marriage. Hence, he assumes that he is not threatening her negative or positive phase. Lady Capulet's reply in Juliet's behalf reports the dramatic news that she has suddenly refused to marry Paris. This decision clearly threatens her parents' positive and negative phase, and in turn, Lady Capulet's reaction that she wishes Juliet dead threatens both aspects of Juliet's phase. Consequently, it would appear that when she tells Capulet that she gives you thanks, her report of Juliet's polite conversational behavior in refusing the marriage is almost certainly ironic. So indeed, just before this extract begins, when Juliet told her mother that she would not marry Paris, she was extremely direct about it and thanked no one. Capulet's next speech is rude to Juliet in that she asked Lady Capulet questions he should really be asking of Juliet, thus apparently depriving her of the right to speak. So, let's examine these passage. So, examine the politeness strategies that is being employed by the two characters in the extract. And the context here is they just met for the first time. So, row 1 will be the professor and row 2 will be the pupil. 1, 2, 3, go.
Good morning. Good morning. You are. I suppose you really are. The new pupil. Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. You see, I came at the right time. I didn't want to be late. Good. Yes. That's very good. Thank you. But you shouldn't have hurried too much, you know. I don't quite have to apologize for how you kept you waiting. I was just finishing. You understand? I was just... I hope you will forgive me. Oh, but you mustn't, sir. It's perfectly all right, sir. My apologies.
So what can you say about the attitudes towards one another, the two characters in the...
They are both understanding and
Yes, Shai.
The pupil.
they're both understanding and polite.
How about Mayan?
Same as Shaira.
The student
Yes,
use the word sir to show
Show
respect.
professional way.
Yes, Noel. Kuan ka na. Like, makita ko na ko nag-sir siya and good morning, like, ni-greet siya good morning. Then, dayon, kuan po, ang professor po kay kuan, like, ni kuan, give siya apologies, then, kuan, like, kuan, butan na po kayo ang student, no? So, wala na ko nabutang ang guide questions in identifying the politeness and impoliteness in a text, but here are some of the guide questions. So, are the characters' politeness behaviors reciprocal? Are the characters polite towards one another? So here, are the characters polite towards one another?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So, in what ways are FAs mitigated? So another one is, are there any examples of impoliteness? And lastly, now examine the politeness strategies of the various characters in more detail. So, kuan, like, para ma-identify dyan mo, kuan, like, mais maison dyan mo identify is, imo dyan i-examine ang text or a passage. So that would be all. Thank you, and once again.